welcome to MOD. We are the Museum of Discovery. We are in Adelaide on North Terrace adjacent to Morford Street Bridge. So when we reopen, please come and visit us. We're open 6 days a week. There are only 2 people in the museum today. There is myself, Debbie, and there is Samuel. Say hello, Samuel.
Hello, Samuel.
It's so funny. We are going to be meeting one of our 7 siblings today. Our current exhibition is called 7 Siblings from the Future, where we meet 7 people who live in 2050 and explore some of the choices that they might have to make in their world. So, right now we are meeting Rowan.
Some idiot has hacked my food computer and changed the password. Now I can't make my synthetic emission-free hamburgers. My sibling said I can already make them for the party. Julia wants to make some ancient traditional dishes, but I believe that dead animals have no place on the kitchen table. I hate people that kill animals and plants, like kangaroo farmers, or Mia. Mia eats heirloom foods because she thinks they taste better. They don't. They're not even that healthy. There's bacteria in the soil that can kill children, adults, everyone.
Warning, Rowan, I'm detecting high stress through your bioimplant, which will lower your problem-solving capabilities. Take 5 minutes for a breathing exercise.
I don't have time to breathe. Help me figure out the computer's password, and I can make you a synthetic emission-free hamburger to say thank you.
Actually, it's like lunchtime, so I'm pretty keen on that. Let's go into Rowan's room and see what we can do about these hackers. I'm already like totally judging, pretending it's someone else. Have you ever eaten a synthetic hamburger?
I have not. I look forward to the time. I would certainly give it a shot. I'll try anything at least once.
That's fair enough. So this is Rowan's kitchen. We have Rowan's computer here, and they don't know their password because someone's hacked it. So we are invited to try and figure it out. Now, for some unknown reason, the hackers have left clues all around Rowan's room. I don't get why that
How
happened.
convenient.
How convenient. That we can go and try and figure out to see if we can learn the code. So I know that we've got blue over here, so we can pop over here to this blue clue. And we have a little bit of an equation. So A plus B plus H minus D. And around the sides it says A equals 1, B equals 2, and C equals 3. So with my 100% quick maths brain, that I totally haven't done this before, I know that means 1 plus 2 plus something minus 4, which equals 7.
So I think H will be 8, and D would be 4 because I can count.
Which is A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Bianca's already come in with 7, which
Well done.
is G.
So, if we put that back into the alphabet, 7, the 7th letter of the alphabet is G. So we can put G here.
All right.
I know that one's C because I've already done it.
That one was the puzzle one. Too easy.
Oh, yeah, that's a T. Pretty sure that's a G. Nope, it's not.
Let's have a look at the maze one then. Let's have a closer look.
So, starting from here, let's go. A. A can go down right to the middle.
Yes, it can.
Okay.
First go. What a fluke.
So let's do A. It's not A.
Maybe someone...
I need it.
That's all right.
Well done, you got the machine
So,
to work. I actually got it to
yeah.
work by mashing buttons. So, who hacked Rowan's food machine? We've got 4 options to choose from. We've got Yukalara kangaroo farmers because Rowan is upset that their food is going on the market. Mia because they only accept organic food. Julia because they only want food from the wild. And Rowan staged the whole hacking because it's not possible to make zero emission and healthy synthetic food. Any What are people feeling? I feel like there's not a whole lot of information that allows me to make this choice.
We've had one of our viewers has asked if we can solve the green puzzle.
You want to solve the green puzzle?
That's
okay.
always the trickiest one.
I was like getting too excited.
I like
to
the
talk
button
science.
mashing, but yeah.
I like the button mashing, but...
So hopefully when we open again, we'll have 7 siblings going.
I don't want to put all of the answers online
And
for
then
everyone
we'll-
to come and see.
And then you'll be able to come in and
Try them yourself.
solve the puzzles yourself.
So I think this one goes like this.
I'm somewhat of an expert in this one. I like to
Somewhat
think,
have done
so
it 100 times.
That's not how it goes.
Oops. Remember how I said I was an expert? I didn't. I know what it's supposed to make. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, I think you're on track.
There we go.
That is what some would call, I'll go around here so we can, some would call that a T, so we'll call it a T as well. All right, let's get back to the all-important question of...
I 100% forgot everything.
So we'll just button mash. As Lee pointed out, that's a great gaming method.
Well done.
So we've hacked the computer, or we've solved the hack.
We hacked again. So, who do you think might have hacked Rowan's food machine?
Feel free to shout
Kangaroo
out any
farmers,
answers.
Mia, Julia, or Rowan? The competition, somebody who only believes in organic food, somebody who believes food should be completely from the wild, or Rowan staging the whole thing and not wanting to admit that they can't do it. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. That's like the main thing, isn't it? I'm gonna say the farmers.
Interesting discussion point there.
I'm gonna say the farmers.
The competition.
The competition. It does bring up a lot of questions, though, when you're looking at things like synthetic meats. So Rowan has used a food machine to either grow or 3D print this synthetic burger, 0 emissions. When we're looking at synthetic meat, there are a few things that we need to know first. Synthetic meat is a form of in vitro cell culture. So in vitro just means in the glass, like in a test tube or in a petri dish. And those cells are taken from an animal and then they proliferate, meaning those cells double. Those cells will duplicate themselves to get more cells. That's the same as what happens to us in our body and in animal bodies, but we're able to do it in a petri dish. That means that once you have the first cell from the animal, proliferating that or continuing to make new copies of that cell, you're not going to need another animal involved. So that's pretty exciting. But there are a few difficulties when it comes to synthetic meat growing as well. So one of them is the type of media that you use. So if you have seen on TV, sometimes you can see a petri dish that scientists use that round thing, and it's got like little bacteria growing in it. There's some sort of jelly-like substance underneath that, and that's called a medium, and that's what the meat needs to grow on. That's a nutrient-rich type of thing that gives lots of yummies to the meat in order for it to grow. You want to make sure that's got no animal products in yourself, because otherwise, really, what's the point in doing it? So maybe we can look at things like seaweed, which is really nutritious as a form of nutrient in our medium. Another thing to think about is that in our bodies, between our cells, we have lots and lots of blood vessels that are going between the cells and delivering nutrients right to the cells, delivering nutrients and oxygen in between the cells. That's a very, very tiny space to be able to get into.
Sorry about that, folks.
I don't know where we cut out. What was I saying last?
You're talking, yeah.
This guy usually doesn't listen to me in every day anyway, so I talked about cells and how they need to grow and proliferate. I talked about the type of medium that the cells need to grow on, how it needs to be really nutritious, and maybe we could use something like seaweed, but we don't want to use any animal products. And I also talked about how we have blood vessels inside us that go cell to cell delivering nutrients and oxygen. and they have to move through very tiny spaces in the cell. That's really hard for us to do synthetically because we aren't using any blood cells, so we have to find another mechanism. So it's a really complicated process when it comes to growing meat. What kind of cells do you think you'd like to see grown?
Well, it's difficult to recreate a steak, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's easy with mince and things that have fairly steady consistency, but a thing like a marbled steak or that kind of thing is difficult.
Yeah, the main reason why it's so difficult to grow something like a steak as opposed to mince is because unless you have a stem cell, usually what we eat is muscle if we're looking at animals. So we take a muscle cell. A muscle cell can only grow another muscle cell. A stem cell can grow into lots of different cells. Currently, where our technology is, we can take those muscle cells and proliferate to make more muscle cells, but not take the stem cells in the same way to make all of those different cells you'd see in a steak. So a steak is not made of just one type of cell. When you have the really marbled steak, you've got lots of fat cells and quite a few other cells as well. So that's something else that is a difficulty to overcome when you're looking at synthetic foods. Just trying to get a whole different variety of cells in there. But some other things that it might look at is Rowan is trying to make a zero emissions synthetic burger. So that means less water is used, less carbon is going into the atmosphere, and that's quite difficult when you're trying to make these new things.
We do have a question actually
Yeah.
From one of our viewers.
Yeah.
Boromin has asked, how do you think it will affect the food chain?
How do I think it would affect the food chain? That's a really good question. So currently most of the meat that we eat is already agriculturally farmed, which means that the people who are going to be affected would be things like dairy farmers. However, there are people like the kangaroo farmers who hunt. We can't domesticate kangaroos like we can cows, so they are completely hunted. So it's quite possible that when we're looking at it from a sustainable point of view, the kangaroo farmers might actually be alright if people are choosing the synthetic meat. I'm pretty sure there will still be people who want to eat wild things. Like with anything, nobody eats just one form of things. And that means also that we could have a lot less domesticated animals in captivity. We could have a lot more, hopefully, if we get to the point where it's completely, you can make that marbled steak, which really benefits the environment because dairy farming is one of the major forms of emissions and carbon emissions in agriculture. So,
just on that note, we've got another question from Cheerlin. Let's have a look. It is related to, we're looking for ways that we can help save the environment and staying and eating healthy. Would consuming that burger, which is obviously a kind of genetically modified organism, affect our health and the environment?
Okay, interesting question again. So when you're looking at synthetic meat, it's not necessarily genetically modified. In saying that, it's quite possible that in 2050 a lot of the plants and cells that we are going to be using will be genetically modified, but we're not entirely sure with Rowans. Otherwise, it means we're eating pure meat cells, so maybe there are other types of cells that we consume when we eat meat that we might be missing out on, but that doesn't mean that the actual muscle cells that we're consuming at the same time are bad for us. When we're looking at genetic modification, because that's a really interesting question as well, genetic modification has been around for quite a while now, and we have a lot of data looking into the effects of genetically modified plants on humans. And there are two types of, when we think of modification, there are two different ways of doing it. There's genetic modification, which makes changes to a single genome within a single plant or animal, usually a plant. Or there's transgenics, which is moving genes from one organism to another, moving one from one species to another. Mostly we use genetic modification, which introduces these new mutations that we can control. That means we're less likely to get off-target mutations, and it means we know exactly where the mutation is and we can test it really highly. The other forms of generating new mutations in plants agriculturally has been a lot of selective breeding. And over years and years and years, that might mean you get some sort of trait that you can see and is really good, like a big fat grain, but it also means you might get other types of mutations that you don't account for. So a really interesting one is with tomatoes. Tomatoes have been bred to be really big. They've been bred to last long in, look at my red tomato.
Yeah, perfect
How
timing.
exciting. They have been bred to last long so that they can go over to the supermarket. But during that time, they've lost some of the genes that contribute to the nice flavour of tomatoes. So that is one case of how selective breeding might actually be more harmful than genetic modification, where we can actually control the mutations and make sure nothing else is being introduced.
So it's
that's
not
my
really
personal belief.
it's not really a one-size-fits-all answer when
No.
it comes to genetic modification, I suppose.
No, it isn't. It's highly individual to an individual gene or individual plant. But the amount of research that goes into something before it's commercially available leads me to believe that that's not going to be a problem for human health. Any other questions?
Yeah, feel free to shoot any questions. We're probably running out of time now anyway, but
Yeah.
that was...
Unfortunately, I can talk about plants until I die, and I never want to stop. But that is a quick overview of Rowan. Rowan is trying to achieve low emission, low climate impact synthetic meat where we don't need to use plants and animals and cause no harm. Whether that's possible, I guess we'll see in 2050, but thank you for visiting Rowan with me. And we will have a few more videos for you to watch about the other siblings. If you come back today at 2 o'clock, we will be visiting Kai and looking at how transport might be in the future. Thanks.
Thank you.